What if the classic fairy tale of the Frog Prince wasn't a happy ending? What if the kiss wasn't magic, but manipulation? Tonight, we unearth the story beneath the story. Welcome to Whisper of the Night, a space where the tales you once knew are stripped of their golden gloss and laid bare in the cold moonlight. In this retelling of the Frog Prince, we'll explore the twisted threads woven into its charming disguise. A girl, pressured to honour a promise she never truly gave. A kiss, offered not in love but in resignation. And a transformation that doesn't feel like triumph but trauma. Was it love or survival? As we dive into this psychological re-examination, you may start to see echoes of this tale in real life, in power dynamics, in coercive relationships, and in the quiet sacrifices we're taught to make in the name of kindness. So settle in, let the frog speak, and remember, just because a story ends with a kiss doesn't mean it was ever romantic. There was a time when the princess loved silence, before the court and its endless voices, before the banquet halls and the stifling perfume of expectation, before her name became something whispered like currency, traded between nobles in exchange for power. Back then, the garden was her sanctuary, a still pond hidden behind twisted hedges. There, with only birdsong and her own heartbeat for company, she would sit by the well and speak to no one. But even silence, it seemed, could be stolen. It began on the day her golden ball rolled into the depths, a trivial loss, a child's mistake. She should have walked away. No kingdom would fall over a toy. But then came the voice, wet and cold and crawling from the shadows of the stone rim. Will you trade your freedom for your treasure? She didn't understand the words, not truly. She was a girl raised on etiquette, not contracts, and the frog's smile was human, strange, curious, familiar even. If I return what you've lost, it croaked, you'll be mine for a time. You'll eat beside me, sleep beside me, keep your promises. She had never made one of her own before. All her vows were spoken for her, dictated by protocol, signed in ink she hadn't chosen. This one felt different, more like a secret than a deal. So she said yes. And the moment she did, the air shifted. The garden grew colder. The well no longer shimmered like before. And when the frog leapt from the dark with her golden ball clutched in its mouth, something ancient and binding settled around her bones. At first she laughed, a silly story to tell her handmaids, a game played with the wind and her own imagination. But that night, as she prepared for bed, the door creaked open. Servants whispered in confusion, and there, standing on the marble threshold, slick with pond water, was the frog. I've come to claim what was promised. The guards didn't stop it. The courtiers didn't question it. She, the golden girl of the palace, was not asked if she wanted this creature beside her, because she had said yes. That was all that mattered. Consent given in innocence is still consent, they said. A promise made is a debt owed. The frog hopped beside her as she was led to dinner. It sat at her feet during the meal. Its skin was damp, its eyes unblinking. It did not speak again. It didn't have to. She was not a child anymore, not a princess either. She was a prisoner in her own story. And the worst part was she'd built the bars herself. In her chambers that night, she stared at the reflection in the glass, the silk gown, the trembling lips, the frog on her pillow, and she asked the mirror, in a voice smaller than a whisper, what she had truly agreed to. But the mirror, like everyone else, only stared back in silence. The castle grew quieter after the frog arrived, not because it demanded silence. No, it never spoke above a whisper. But people whispered less around her now. Their eyes carried questions they didn't dare ask. Their smiles thinned when she passed, as though her presence carried a rot that might spread. She wondered if that's what shame felt like. Not loud, not screaming, just a quiet unravelling, thread by thread. Every night it would follow her to her chambers. It never touched her, never even moved closer than the foot of her bed, but its presence pressed on her like a second skin. It breathed with her, watched her sleep, or pretended to. She had tried once to refuse, to bar the door. But her father had summoned her the next morning, his face tight with disapproval. A promise is a bond, he said. Royal blood honours its word, and so the door stayed open and the frog stayed close. The kiss came the third night. She didn't plan it. No girl dreams of kissing a creature that smells of river stones and decay. But he asked. voice low, eyes unblinking. "Do you love me yet?" She laughed, not because it was funny, but because she was afraid. And then she saw it, the flicker in its expression, not hurt, not anger. "Hunger. I gave you back what you lost," it said. "Don't I deserve what I was promised?" She wanted to scream. "No!" That she had never understood what she'd agreed to, that a child's yes given in fear should never count as truth. But the frog waited, and she was so tired of disappointing people. So she kissed it. It wasn't like the stories. There was no sparkle, no golden light, no prince revealed with tearful eyes and a grateful smile. Just silence. And then a shudder beneath her skin, like something ancient had moved inside her. The frog did not vanish, but it changed, taller, heavier. Its shadow stretched further across the wall. Its voice gained shape, deeper, more human, but still slick with dampness. "You've set me free," it said, but she did not feel like the one who'd done the freeing. She felt hollow. That night she did not sleep. She stared at the ceiling and tried to remember what her life had been like before the kiss, before the pond, before the voice in the dark, but the memory wouldn't come. All she could hear was the sound of water dripping in the silence, slow, steady, like time melting through the cracks. And from the corner of the room, the voice whispered again, "Love is obedience. Obedience is freedom." By the seventh night, she had stopped asking herself when it would end. There was no curse to be broken, no magical transformation, no kiss to undo the chain she had tied around her own throat. What she had unleashed was not a prince, not really. He had the shape of a man now. Yes, but the stillness remained, the coldness. He never blinked unless she did, never laughed unless she smiled, as though his body wore humanity like a mask he hadn't quite learned to fit. And worst of all, he called her darling, as if the word weren't a cage in itself. The court rejoiced. "A miracle," they whispered. "True love's power." The old frog tale, reborn in flesh. The nobles smiled wider. The king planned a feast, and her handmaids began measuring lace and ivory for a bridal gown. None of them asked her what she felt, because love, they said, was duty, and duty was sacred. But in the darkness of her room, she no longer recognized herself. The girl who once dared to wander alone, to dream by the well, now flinched at the sound of soft footsteps. He never raised his voice, never touched her harshly, but he watched, always. Sometimes he would speak of the time in the pond, the long years in the silence, the weight of slime and shadows, the ache of being ignored. "You don't know what it's like," he whispered once, sitting at the foot of her bed, "to be hidden, dismissed, feared." And in a strange way, she felt pity. But pity too can be poisoned, because he used it, twisted it, pressed it against her like a knife wrapped in velvet. "I was trapped," he said, "but now we're together. You saved me." Saved! Was that what this was? Her freedom traded for his salvation? Her voice for his comfort? She tried once to speak to her father, to tell him she wasn't ready, that something was wrong. He looked at her the way kings look at fragile porcelain, not like a daughter, but like a vessel for peace. "You have no idea how long we've waited for this union," he said. "He is powerful, loyal. He loves you. Loyal, powerful, love." Such heavy words, none of them hers. That night she dreamed of drowning. But when she woke, her hands were wet and her golden ball was gone from her pillow. Only a lily pad remained, still slick with pond water. The wedding was a blur, silks and silver, trumpets and trembling. She moved through it like a shadow stitched into satin, smiling when told, bowing when expected. Her voice, when used, was light and lovely, but it no longer belonged to her. He stood beside her, tall, composed, regal in a way no one questioned anymore. The frog was gone, they all said it. He was a prince now. But at night, when the torches burned low and the halls emptied of music, she could still smell the pond on his skin, faint, feral, familiar, and something else. Control! It crept in slowly, like mist through cracks in the windows. First, the locked doors, then the missing letters from her old tutors. Then the handmaids, reassigned, replaced, removed. And in their place, silence. "You must rest," he'd say. "You've always looked so tired." Or, "You don't need the outside world anymore, you have me." And when she faltered, unsure, he would smile, a smile carved from the same still waters he had once slept in. "You're free now," he'd whisper. "Why are you afraid?" Some nights she couldn't tell if she was dreaming. She'd wake to find the golden ball again, placed at the edge of the bed. gleaming, wet, a reminder, a relic, a warning. She wanted to run, to scream, but something in her heart had grown soft and numb, like fruit left too long in the cold. Was it fear, or something worse? Maybe she had become the story they wanted. The girl who gives, the girl who obeys, the girl who stays. Sometimes she would sit by the window and watch the pond far below, a silver stain in the moonlight. She wondered if it was still hungry, and if so, was she the meal? Or the seed? It happened slowly, like the quiet leak of poison into a goblet. A maid dismissed for asking too many questions. A visiting noble whispered to her, "You look pale," and was never invited back. The prince never raised his hand. He didn't need to. Every word he said was wrapped in velvet and steel, and over time, even she began to repeat them. He loves me. He saved me. He only wants what's best. At night, she told herself stories to sleep. She remembered the girl she was, laughing, bold, barefoot in the gardens. The girl who played by the well, who threw the golden ball too high just to chase it, just to feel something. That girl was gone now, swallowed by wedding vows and velvet silence. But one evening, as autumn draped gold over the dying trees, she found herself by the pond again. No guards, no prince, just her. The surface was still, too still. She knelt, whispered into it. "Did I free you?" The water answered with a ripple, soft, mocking. She leaned closer, and then she saw it, not her reflection. His! Not the prince as he now appeared, but the frog. Those same cold, ancient eyes, that same unblinking stare, and then a second reflection. Hers, but not as she was. Her mouth was stitched into a smile, her eyes wide and empty, a doll carved from obedience. She gasped and fell back, trembling. He was behind her. "Don't be afraid," he said, voice like silk wrapped around thorns. "You were always meant to be mine." She wanted to scream, to run, but she couldn't tell where his magic ended and where her submission began. Was this love? Or a prison she had helped build with every yes, every silence, with every swallowed cry? And then he reached for her hand so gently and placed the golden ball into her palm. "You've forgotten yourself," he said. "Let me help you remember." She didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. The golden ball lay on the table beside her bed, gleaming like a cursed moon. Watching, remembering. Every shadow on the wall whispered, every silence screamed. By dawn, she knew what she had to do. The pond was quiet, too quiet. She walked to the edge, barefoot, the hem of her gown soaking in the dew. The morning fog clung to her skin like breath that wasn't hers. Behind her, the castle stood in silence, a kingdom of secrets. She took the golden ball and placed it in her palm. "Come," she whispered. He did. Of course he did. A soft ripple across the pond. A reflection that flickered. Prince, frog, something else entirely. "You called," he said. Her voice didn't shake. Not this time. "Was it ever real?" she asked. "The spell? The curse? The love?" He smiled. Not cruelly, but with something worse. "Certainty. No, but your belief made it real enough." Her breath caught. "So this, all of this, was just a story," he interrupted. "One you were told to believe, one you chose to finish." She stepped closer. "I didn't choose." "Didn't you?" The water darkened. The pond seemed to swell with something ancient, hungry. "You kissed me," he said. "You let me in. You gave me your silence, your trust, your soul. I was a child. You were obedient." He offered his hand. No longer webbed, no longer soft. "Stay," he whispered. "Rule with me. We can make the world forget it ever hurt you." She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time she saw him not as frog nor prince, but as what he truly was. Control wrapped in charm, power wrapped in need, and she saw herself too, not a princess, not a victim, but something awakening. She dropped the ball into the pond. It didn't sink, it burned. The water boiled around it, and from the centre of the fire a sound rose. Not a scream, a song, hers. The prince flinched just slightly. "You cannot break a story," he warned. She smiled, not sweetly, not softly. "But I can stop telling it." And she turned her back to the water, walking barefoot through the mist. No longer the girl who whispered yes, no longer the princess bound by spell or silence. Just herself, finally free. Some fairy tales don't end with a kiss. Some end with a voice finally found.